Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is Jennifer Reynolds. I'm your armchair travel host from Tampa, Florida. I'm so glad you could all join me. This is our 11th session together. Going back in our story, I was chatting with one of my friends, Michelle, and thinking and lamenting about our travel situation, and we decided that it was time we got away each evening and went somewhere different and did something different. And hence our armchair travel series was born. I committed to an evening session each evening at 7 p.m. until the end of the month, and that approaches tomorrow night. And then maybe we'll move to something, doing a couple of different things during the week time. But my name is Jennifer Reynolds. I was born and raised in Canada. I live in Tampa, Florida. I've worked in the travel industry all of my life, and I'm just thrilled to pieces that all of you are joining me on these little escapes. I spent about 18 years living and working on board cruise ships. Some of the itineraries, of course, the Caribbean, the Baltic, South America, Alaska for many, many seasons, South Pacific as well. Initially, I was part of a duo juggling magic act. I also ran shore excursions for a period of time, but I had a chance to do a tremendous amount of travel throughout the world, and truly going to sea is something I love tremendously. But that instilled in me a deep love for travel. And over the last couple of years, I committed to doing Africa as well as Australia. And Australia, that photograph on the upper right hand side was taken in Melbourne, Australia. I have a nephew in Adelaide and another in Hobart in Tasmania. And I've also developed a deep passion and love for Tasmania. So I was able to hit Australia. I was able to hit Africa, and my husband of many years, Dr. Stuart Nelson, was a very popular oceanographer and lecturer on cruise ships. And with Stu, we traveled the world. I developed a very deep love of history and geography, a serious passion for what makes our world tick. I love maps. And after having gone to Africa, having visited Australia in December of last year, I spent Christmas in the Antarctic. So it was pretty exquisite to have seen and walked on the seventh continent. And that just took place last month. But I've been in the travel industry all of my life. I started as a rep for a Canadian tour operator, living in the Dominican Republic and Mexico, some places overseas. On cruise ships, I now work with travel agents in the business, and there's just no question that our world is changing so rapidly. And I always have been an advocate of the travel agent world. I've always worked with travel agents in my professional career. And online with us tonight are many of my travel agent partners, and in fact, many customers and many travelers of my travel agent partners. And I say welcome to all of you. Travel strong is what we do. We live to travel, we love to travel, and it is really fun to be a part of these journeys. I am the Regional Director of Sales in the state of Florida for Scenic Luxury Cruises and Tours, and I am just one of several BDMs, or Business Development Managers, for my company and indeed for my industry. Behind all of us in the field is a whole bunch of people in our home offices. Ours happens to be in Boston. Everybody's working from home like every place else. And so as we look to what we do, what we love, what we're passionate about, the thing that we live to do is travel. And tonight I wanted to take you on an armchair journey through Europe. We got together last week and we looked at some river cruising. We've been to a few other places, but I share in front of you Amsterdam, the canals and the boats, the simplicity here, yet a wonderful jumping off point for our rivers. And I point that out because river cruising is certainly a magnificent way to see a tremendous part of Europe. We've learned a lot about it in our travels together, but river cruising is not the only way to see Europe. It is a wonderful way indeed. Let's do a very quick review of the rivers. Coming up into Amsterdam at the top, we have the Rhine River that flows all the way. The Rhine goes here all the way into Switzerland, and we're going to take a little look at Switzerland and why you would explore a bit beyond there. We talked about the Rhine-Main-Danube Canal right here that connects Amsterdam all the way down through Nuremberg and Vienna and Budapest, all the way out to the Black Sea. We looked at our river cruises in France. We'll look at some land options there as well, and of course over here in Portugal. But here's what the thing is I found in all my years of travel, some people will do a trip one year by a ship, they'll do another on their own. Perhaps they'll take their family and their kids and they'll go explore someplace or stay in a bed and breakfast. Maybe they'll do a customized option. And that's why we use our travel professionals. And looking at Amsterdam, it's a magnificent jumping off point, particularly for those of us on the East Coast of the US. And I say that because it's springtime, Holland and Belgium. The gateways or the airlines are fairly easy to get over wherever you may be. Atlanta, it's just a great spot to get to. But it's the Rhine River that connects Amsterdam and starts running upstream. And we know what the rivers are. We know the attraction, the eye candy, the castles, the small towns, the medieval villages that are here, the food and the wine. But it's pretty neat when you start getting a little bit more inland or up into cities like Lucerne in Switzerland, where the beginning or the genesis of some of these rivers begin. Because lots of people will do a river cruise, but then there's an opportunity to go within the country itself. And Switzerland is just exquisite. And I popped in some maps on purpose up here where you can see from Zermatt and how we touch on and kiss on Italy and Lake Geneva, and Zurich in Switzerland, which is where the river boats are going to go from. But let's take a look at what some of this land opportunity looks like through Switzerland. I was really fortunate to have done a 14-day lecture tour with my husband through Switzerland. We pretty much ate and drank our way around here. The Swiss fondues were absolutely magnificent. The train travel, when they say as you're traveling through Switzerland, it's like a Swiss watch. They're not kidding. The doors close at 13:02 or 13:07, and they are so specific. But Switzerland is a very alpine destination. It is a expensive destination to go to. It has one of the highest qualities of life in all of Europe. It's said that you can drink out of many of the lakes here. People will come in the wintertime to ski. They come in the summertime to explore the mountains and the scenery. And it is really, really, really exquisite. But there are a myriad of ways that one can get around. When you see the bridges and the flowers, Switzerland is suffering from what many other places are suffering from as well. You're looking at the bridge, and that is over tourism or overpopulation. You want to see these places, other folks want to do it as well. And certainly spring, summer, June, July, and August being peak seasons. But expanding your mind and expanding your thought processes into March and April and September, October, November. I encourage you to think about later parts of this year around Thanksgiving and Christmas time, and sort of imagine yourself wandering around Lucerne in Switzerland and seeing the story, the statue of the lion, and learning about the statue of the lion. And you know, nothing in Europe, and particularly in European history, is mutually exclusive. When you see the lion here and you learn the story of what it was for the soldiers, and you go into Rome and see the Swiss soldiers in Rome, the connection between history, between the characters, between the people, between the geography, what the rivers opened up is really extraordinary. France is without a doubt a number one destination people go to. France has had a lot of time in the news recently with some of the strikes that have been here. I've been in touch with a lot of agents who have been there during the strikes, not really had any kind of a problem. Lots of river cruises start in Paris, but there's so many other things you can do by train, by private arrangements, by guided vacation, staying for a couple of nights in Paris, going to see the Palace of Versailles, which is just a few hours outside of Paris city itself. You can get up into what I call Monet territory. You don't have to do this by river cruise. You could do this by a day trip as well out of Paris. But there's some really neat stuff that happens out of here, and that is those cruises, the river cruises from Paris all the way up to Honfleur, through Rouen, through the Giverny area. This is the territory where Van Gogh was, where things in the small towns, the small medieval villages, you can do some of this by car. Most of it's going to be done by a guided vacation. And a lot of the focus is getting out towards the ocean to the beaches of Normandy. There's a very big anniversary coming up in June again. Whether people will be able to travel in June is uncertain or not. But if they're not able to get there, let us go there virtually, because this is a part of the world that people want to go to repeatedly. And on a river cruise, you get up into Honfleur and you get over to the beaches of Normandy. You can get down to Caen. There's a number of museums, and again, so many ways that you're able to do it. Mont Saint Michel has popped up a number of times recently. When I worked on board ships, we used to run a lot of excursions into here. And that walk up to the top of the hill at Mont Saint Michel is not easy at all. The causeway there, of course, is susceptible to the tides. We always know Mother Nature is completely in control, but you can do this on a guided vacation. Some of the cruise ships will come in here. And I really believe that this part of France is worth some pretty serious exploration. I popped up another map on the right-hand side. You can see Paris and a trip that would go up to Omaha beaches and Mont Saint Michel on the northern end of the country. When you get over to Bordeaux and even as far as Biarritz and down to Carcassonne, these are all very different and unique experiences. Some people will do them together. I know a lot of people who rent cars. They may do the B&B thing or the guided vacations, but you can end up in a really nice spot like Bordeaux and then jump on a river cruise for 7 nights and eat and drink your way through these parts of the world. You don't want to be getting behind the wheel of a car if you're doing any sort of wine tasting anywhere. And of course, the French's philosophy is in line with mine in the fact that red wine is a food group. So we do want to pay attention to that. Southern part of France and the lavender fields, the flexibility and the activities that are available, the kayaking, the bike riding. Yes, it's got to do with the food culture, the history culture, particularly on the rivers, but the southern part of France, and I was scheduled to leave to do the southern part of France the first part of April. So that's my number one trip when I'm able to get airbound again, is the southern part of France into Nice, and then sailing up the river all the way. Ultimately, I was going to stay in Paris for a couple of nights. And that part of the world I will go to this fall. And that's why I wanted to develop these kind of series of travels for us, so that we can kind of get together and experience these places together. About a year and a half ago, I had a chance to explore Spain. I'd gone into a lot of ports of call. And when you're on cruise ships, those will take you into a country. Riverboats will take you through a country. It's quite possible that you may have got to the Costa del Sol, which is a nice sun, sand, sea destination in the southern part of Spain. Valencia, where the Valencia oranges come from, or as far as Barcelona. Truly a magnificent spot, a jumping on and jumping off spot. But this is Madrid, what you're looking at here, the home of magnificent museums, tremendous amounts of food, a culture and a history, remembering that the Moors were through here. And over history, everyone built on top of each other. So you will find a Catholic church built on the remnants of a mosque. Places like the Alhambra, where visits have to be scheduled in advance, and you simply must be there on time or you're going to give up your time slot. But I encourage you historically to remember who was in this part of the world and the Muslims and the influences that they had. And then Barcelona. I've been a Gaudi fan for years and years. I think Barcelona really came for me when the Olympics were here. And for many, that's when we first discovered exactly how extraordinary and different and special Barcelona is. In my years on cruise ships, came in and out and sailed a number of times, was able to stay here a number of times as well. And for anyone who has any interest in Gaudi and his influence, which is wide and deep, the Picasso Museum here is just spectacular in the old section. You can just see the spires of the Sagrada Familia, the Sacred Family Church. And if you like Gaudi, a piece of music you may be interested in, if you're a fan of the Alan Parsons Project, a not well-known album called Gaudi, and one of the fabulous tracks is called the Sagrada Familia. It's pretty exquisite to see this thing up close, to see it from a distance, to realize the effort that has gone into the church that is still not completed, the plans that have more for it to be built, but that calls for the destruction of communities that have been built up on the edges of the structure itself. Just exquisite. You can walk to this in the city. You can do the hop on and hop off buses. I highly recommend a trip to the outside of the city to places like Montserrat, but you better be prepared because you're going up for some higher altitudes. This is where monks and old churches would be. The Black Madonna was here. You may find yourself arriving in some of these places when a ceremony is going on. And often it's very easy to find small towns, small villages, and, well, lots of wineries, no matter where you go throughout Spain. In Spain, the food's exquisite. The paella, lots of markets. You can go high end, you can go low end. But lots of people who do Spain are also going to combine it with Portugal. And that was a photo of Portugal. Portugal, Lisbon, Portugal, Salamanca, a wonderful combination. But in my world, I still feel that both of them can stand individually. I think you need 2 weeks if you're going to look at both. Zipping over towards Germany and Neuschwanstein Castle, some of the river cruises we looked at, that very popular segment from Passau to Budapest. But land tours as well that go to Cologne and Hamburg that will get you over into Vienna, into areas that aren't accessible by the rivers. But I, again, as an engineer's daughter, I stand in awe, and I give my praise and thanks to the engineers who created these waterways, who allow us to be able to connect the upper part of the river, to allow us to go from the Rhine through the canal all the way down the Danube. City centers like Prague, Vienna, and Budapest, pre-cruise, post-cruise, seeing them by day, seeing them by nighttime. That's what this is really all about, eating in the cafes and sucking it up, buttercup, as we love to say, smelling it, eating it, drinking it, and tasting it. And Christmas time is exquisite. From our Thanksgiving till about the 20th of December, this place lights up with Christmas markets where everyone goes and they display all of their artifacts, all of their crafts, their food. Everyone comes after work, and it's a hugely festive environment. And frankly, I just can't recommend that enough. And I get that one on my wish list for the end of the year. I think that might be a nice way to see the end of the year. Unusual spots further up the river as we go through the Iron Gates, as we say, downriver from Belgrade out to the Black Sea, through, as I said, the Iron Gates, connecting with what were formerly communist countries. Staying in Europe, in our last 10 minutes together, we looked at Venice rather intensely together and some of the significant challenges that face Venice, that indeed are facing Italy as a country. Yet This is one of my all-time favorite images of Venice from space. Bottom left screen, look at the airport, Leonardo da Vinci Airport. Out from that, you're looking at that blob in the middle with the gray on the left-hand side, Burano. And there is Venice proper. And I'll grab my little highlight here and trust you can see the train station where the ships are. Come in here. Train station, and there's that delicious S-shaped canal that takes you right to the other end to St. Mark's Square. Italy is so very special. The Rialto Bridge, the very center of Venice when it was begun historically. Little known spots that folks sometimes don't get to, right outside of Venice. Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo? And that would be Juliet's balcony. Eat your way through this country. There is no such thing as bad gelato, but Italy has the classics. Italy is not a country, it's a lifestyle. We have the classics with Rome, Florence, and Venice, of course. We have the countryside and so many small towns and villages, the opportunity to connect with food, with wine, with simplicity. And we've got a cafe culture that exists in Italy, and this is down towards Naples. And what's Naples famous for in Italy? Pizza. That's where pizza originally came from. And Naples is also the jumping off point for Pompeii. In 79 AD, when Mount Vesuvius erupted, still an active volcano today, one of 3 active volcanoes in Europe, all 3 of those active volcanoes in Italy. In 79 AD, when it erupted and covered all of this area in Pompeii in ash, and today you can visit it and historically see what it was and how the excavations have been done. Lots of folks have never gone to Sicily. I cannot recommend it enough. Sicily is like going back another 10, 15 years in time. Mount Etna is here. Mount Etna is the 2nd active volcano in Italy. And what happens with volcanoes is those delicious, rich ashes go down, which means that the soil is very rich and very ripe. So the produce, the food, the wines, and a phenomenal agriculture that exists on the island of Sicily. You got to look at Greece, talking about the classics. The Greek islands pop up again and again and again, starting in Athens, the cafe culture in Athens. And then, of course, going out to the islands. Some people will cruise the islands. There's ferries you can take from place to place. There's private arrangements that can be made. There are flights that can be had. And we all know that's why you use a travel professional. But I want to stay in Europe and look at Croatia, the entire Dalmatian coast. At Scenic, we have a new ship called the Azura, 50-cabin, 100-passenger yacht that is launching next year in July, and she's going to kiss the coast of Croatia and this really magical area where right now some big ships go in. There's a few smaller ships, but boy, this area is really well worth a look-see, and that's Lake Bled. And you can't do everything by water, my friends. You know, when I look at London and I look at England, I have included it in Europe, yet there are those who would argue with me based on the Venn diagram, Great Britain with Scotland, Wales, and England forming the United Kingdom. But London is exquisite. The theater, the people, the ability to cruise out of London, the newly developed London Eye. Windsor Castle, I am reveling in watching The Crown right now, so I can't wait to get to London and eat in the pubs and ride in the buses. I love the museums, but please don't forget there is so much more than cities. A lot of countrysides. A lot of people come over here to chill out. I had a girlfriend who came over for 6 weeks and rented a house in the Lake District, and all they did was walk and ride bikes and explore cool places like Wales, because most people have never done anything like that. Up into the Snowdonia Mountains, because not many people know about them. But what's Wales most famous for? Tom Jones. He inevitably, I think, has put Wales on the map. Scotland, particularly with the festival in the fall, the military festival every year in August. But again, I share with you a map how often people will say to me, oh, I'm just going to go from London and nip up to Edinburgh. And gee, while I'm there, I think I'll just go over and take a look at Ireland. These are big places. And certainly you can crowd all of them in if you really want to rush it. But look at Edinburgh, the history of Outlander, going to the Isle of Skye, topography, and some cruise ships are calling into these spots. Over in Ireland, the Cliffs of Moher on the western side, yes, they do get a lot of rain in Ireland, and the greenery is exquisite. And as I shared with those of you in my Ireland talk the other night, knowing that as we look from here, gazing west, the next piece of land is actually Newfoundland in Canada, my home country. Everybody knows about the Blarney Stone and about Molly Malone, but she really doesn't look too happy in this picture at all. But so much for us to explore throughout Europe. The Douro River, we've looked a little bit at Portugal. You can do it all by river cruising. And together, over the last 10 days, we've had some pretty extraordinary trips. We nipped down to the Antarctic one evening. We kicked around Ecuador, Quito, the city of eternal spring, and out to the Galapagos Islands. And oh, how I adore that place. We spent a little time in Italy together, particularly in Venice, but we also looked at Rome and Florence, the Panama Canal and a partial transit, and Ireland, that beautiful shot there that you see of the cliffs on the western side. Our friend Ted from Princess and his wife Donna, Ted took us up to Alaska. And if you choose to join me tomorrow night, I'm looking through a myriad of photos I have available, and I'm thinking animals may be in order. A little bit of Africa, a little bit of Tanzania, and maybe a little bit of South America, because after all, our world is completely made for exploring. My name is Jennifer Reynolds. I've been your armchair traveler. Thank you for joining me this evening on our journey around Europe. Tomorrow night, same time, same link, 7 p.m., and we'll head off to some exotic destinations. But in the meantime, let us continue to dream about traveling. We know to travel is to live, and to live is to travel. And thank you for joining me. Travel strong, and know that our content is available on Jennifer Reynolds Travels on YouTube as well as Facebook, and on collagetravelradio.com. Until our next time together. Again, Jennifer Reynolds, your armchair traveler.